Next on Night Watch, a 4 investigates follow-up. The Army Corps called it isolated incidents. But did alleged online attacks against its critics happen more often from their computers than first thought?
Using back-end tools available to any blogger, I was able to discover solid evidence that several members at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have been logging on to articles and forums at NOLA.com and viciously going after anybody that criticized the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
From WWL-TV, the spirit of Louisiana, this is Louisiana's news leader, Channel 4's Eyewitness News Night Watch.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Woltering in for Mike Hoss.
And I'm Lucy Bustamante. New questions are being raised tonight about the use of government-owned computers at the Army Corps of Engineers offices in New Orleans.
As you'll see in this 4 investigates follow-up, critics allege that taxpayer resources are being used to obscure the facts of what caused the flooding after Katrina and to conduct a systematic attack on people who criticize the Corps. New evidence that government-owned computers at the Army Corps of Engineers office here in New Orleans are being used to verbally attack critics of the Corps comes in an affidavit from the former editor-in-chief of NOLA.com. John Donnelly, who was laid off this past February, tells us via satellite from Texas, in late 2006, he started noticing people presenting themselves as ordinary citizens, defending the Corps very energetically.
What stuck out, though, was the wording of the comments was in many ways mirroring news releases from the Corps of Engineers.
This past December, Eyewitness News reported that Levees.org founder Sandy Rosenthal found a recurring theme in attacks against her and her supporters on her internet blogs.
And that message is that the locals blocked the Corps' wishes. And thus that the locals are responsible for the flooding.
Someone with the username Overwrought wrote, "Sure, blame the Corps for the flood wall failures, but who do you blame for your own stupidity for putting your families in such a situation?" And with the screen name Steve O'Nolan, someone wrote on November 18th, quote, "You have chosen Corps bashing to persuade enough underinformed people that Katrina was a federal flood. Then the rest of the nation will pour even more money into the sinkhole of New Orleans."
These commenters tried to discredit these people.
And when Rosenthal investigated, she discovered the comments were coming from users at the internet provider address of the Army Corps of Engineers offices here in New Orleans. She blamed the Corps for a strategy of going after critics.
In the process of trying to obscure the facts of the New Orleans floodings, one of their tactics was just verbal abuse.
The Corps denied any such strategy, saying this isolated incident involved one person out of 1,600 people that make up the New Orleans district. At NOLA.com, John Donnelly noticed some of the users blasting Corps critics became verbally abusive.
And they would go out of their way to target particular users who maybe did a better job in criticizing the Corps.
And Donnelly said he also noticed these users who attacked Corps critics were using Army Corps equipment. He made a spreadsheet of the activity over 6 weeks at the end of December and the beginning of January.
During that 6-week period, there were nearly 700 comments from Corps IPs, the same group of people that I've been watching for over 2 years. So this was not an isolated incident.
The Center for Media and Democracy, which focuses on public relations tactics, says if this is a strategy, it is not uncommon.
In the PR world, it's known as the third-party tactic, and there have been a lot of sort of similar deceptive online communications that use that.
But the Army Corps denies any strategy or policy like that at all.
Get that. This is not some plan where we would go out and ask employees to do this. No.
Ken Holder says employees are allowed to use computers to read blogs and make comments during their breaks.
You certainly don't check your citizenship rights at the door.
Even using taxpayer-funded equipment?
You would be able to use, as I mentioned earlier, you would be able to use your computer during the break times that you had.
But he says Corps employees are not allowed to make abusive comments of any kind. Ken Holder says he will gladly look into the allegations further to see if people at the Corps have violated ethics regulations. Meantime, the new director of content at NOLA.com, James O'Byrne, says he hasn't investigated any of the comments or IP addresses of people challenging critics of the Corps since he took over. And he says, quote, "We generally don't release IP addresses unless mandated by court order to do so."
We have more than enough evidence pointing to a premeditated campaign paid for with taxpayer money to smear New Orleans and New Orleanians and to obscure the facts about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers' responsibility for the worst civil engineering disaster in the world since Chernobyl and the near total destruction of a great American city.